Okay, so I have to assume that we are now live for the Patreon monthly live stream. This is the live stream for February, and if you're joining this video later after it's been filmed, this is for Patreon backers on the Greece level. So basically, I've been going for months using Patreon as a means of supporting my work. It especially became important with YouTube's adpocalypse, and then the Patreon side of things really exploded. And after a while I thought I need to figure out a way of rewarding all of these marvelous people who are rallying to my aid. And one of the ways I decided to do that was to do a special live stream. So if you want to know more, if you want to have more information on that, just go on to patreon.com/Cedars and all of the information is there. But I estimate that there's approximately 60 odd people who will be eligible to follow this live stream live, and I can already see a few of the questions popping up. So we'll get things underway. I've actually got, let's see, happy Super Bowl Sunday for those fans. Yeah, I hadn't realised that. You must forgive me. Obviously I'm British, so I think of American football I think of it as, what's the word? Rugby for pansies. Rugby with padding. Obviously I grew up at a British high school where we played rugby, and there was people colliding with each other with no kind of padding or anything to soften the blow. So it always makes me laugh to see the American footballers with massive padding and helmets. But hey, you know, if you've grown up in that culture, I can fully imagine you getting excited about it. And whichever team you're rooting for, I hope you enjoy the game and get a fair result. I think, especially with my following of football, of soccer that is, the thing that most irritates me if my team loses, it's if they lose unfairly. So if there's a penalty that doesn't get given, or if there's a red card that should have been awarded, and then my team loses, I'm like, ugh. But if it's a simple case of them being completely outplayed, then I can take it much better and just think, well, the better team won. So whoever you're rooting for, I hope you enjoy the game and may the best team win. So that was a longer introduction than anticipated. And Carmelo says, haha, I never thought of American football that way. Well, sometimes you need an outside perspective on things. Frank Jepson says, hey Lloyd and everyone, greetings from Denmark. Wow, it just boggles my mind, all of the different countries. I guess that's the legacy of us all being, all having been in, or most of us having been in, an international religion that really does touch different countries. In fact, every now and then I glimpse the map, the Google, YouTube analytics map of the world, and I think the only country that my videos haven't been seen in, well, I think there's probably two countries, one of which is obviously North Korea, because there is no data for North Korea. I think there was another obscure country as well, but apart from that, over the history of my channel, every country, and I mean including Middle East and everything, every country's had views. So it just, honestly, that's, for me, one of the amazing things about the internet age is that, you know, anybody can just get in front of the camera and broadcast themselves globally. That just, I mean, even if there's two people watching in Guyana or the Ivory Coast or what have you, that's still two people who you've reached, who there's no way you would have reached, you know, even 5 years ago, maybe. Certainly 10 years ago. So it really is amazing. Sherry D'Souza says, so what do you think of our Australian rules football? Definitely more manly, Sherry. I will say that. Yeah, the shorts are much shorter. That's all I would say. But probably that's That's more pleasing to the eye for the ladies and some gentlemen. But yeah, Australian rules football. I don't really know the rules and I don't follow it, to be honest. But it certainly doesn't suffer from the problem of men having to wear padding. Lloyd, thoughts on Mourinho? Just kidding. Hey, Mourinho is Mourinho, and I think you need to be slightly arrogant to succeed in modern football management, and he's got arrogance in spades, but he does deliver. He's got his work cut out at the moment, but I'm quite happy with Mourinho. That's the Manchester United manager, by the way. So I guess I'd better get on with answering some of these questions, because I asked for some questions on the Patreon page and was immediately given a few to get my teeth into. I'll take them in order. I've got a Patreon backer named Garrett who said, why can't we get a monthly writing campaign going, Lloyd? Each month we could pick a different media outlet and all write to them on a chosen topic. It means that people like myself who don't have a channel or voice can be part of the process. Imagine 1,000 letters showing up on a specific topic at a specific TV station to a specific person. And Garrett and I kind of had an exchange on that just so I could fully understand what he was asking. And it's not the first time that Garrett has asked me that question. Listen, I'm an activist, so I'm always interested in new ways of doing activism and getting the word out. I guess I'm just uncomfortable with telling people what to do, to the extent where I'm saying, listen, if you care enough about this subject, you need to actually write a letter and then go to your post office or to the or go to the post box and put a stamp on it and send it to the... I think that there could quite quickly be fatigue in my audience if I was asking people to do that on even a monthly basis. So if there's a really obvious thing that I can get people to do, for example, let's say, I mean, I've got 18,000 subscribers at this point. Let's say I did a video and by sending a letter to a person, we could be guaranteed that there would be this fantastic outcome. I'm obviously going to do that, and I would expect, let's say 80% of my viewership to get involved, because presumably that many people would care about it. But the problem is you can't guarantee the outcome, and in this case it's possible that all you're going to do is piss people off or surprise people or make people feel bewildered. So if there's something that I feel my viewers can do that's fairly simple, such as click on a petition or fire off an email or something, I'm always going to recommend it. It's just that those situations don't come up every day, but I'm definitely mindful of that kind of thing, and I hope that answers your question. Let's see, so Greg had a question. I'm wondering what your views are on the banning of blood transfusions. What was the society's motivation? Was it purely because they thought it was unscriptural? Was it because they wanted to stand out as different? It seems such a huge decision to introduce the ban when they must have known it would cause huge problems and endanger lives. Thanks. Sorry it took me 3 pages to get the question. He had some technical problems. Greg, that's a great question. I'm obviously not going to be able to give you a 100% accurate answer because I wasn't there when that decision was being made. I can only offer speculation. What is worth pointing out is that for decades leading up to the introduction of the ban on blood transfusions in 1945, you have decades of publications, and notably the Golden Age magazine, offering all sorts of advice when it comes to medicine and which medical procedures are advisable and which are reprehensible, and talking about aluminium and goodness knows what. And so it seems a quite logical jump when you look at that kind of catalogue of imposing on people's lives when it comes to medicine, it seems only natural that they would pick out something that they had a particular bugbear with as regards scripture, and it ended up being blood transfusions. Now, did they do it cynically just because they wanted to be awkward, just because they wanted to stand out as different? I've even heard speculation that it was all some sort of conspiracy so that they could test out non-blood medicine and that kind of thing. I mean, goodness knows. Before we can say with any certainty, we'd need some kind of documented proof, such as maybe some private correspondence. We can only say that they certainly did give a scriptural justification for it, even if the justification makes no logical sense. And we can also certainly say that it has cost countless lives since it was introduced. But I try not to get too drawn into exactly what the motivation was, other than to point to the legacy or the history of interfering in medical affairs and say, well, that's the end game. When you start policing what kind of medicine people accept or don't accept, this is what's going to happen. Apologies, by the way, if this video is jumping. I'm seeing live on my video stream and I can't always tell if it pauses or if it skips or jumps. So I just hope that the quality is okay. Let's see, what was the other question? Derek McCorkle. I've actually got two from Derek. This would just be conjecture, of course, but I would like to know what position you think the organisation will find themselves in 10 years from now. Do you foresee a mass exodus of some sort or just a continued stagnation? I think I'll go with continued stagnation. You would think that if there was going to be a mass exodus, you would think 2015, 2016, with the fallout of the Australian Royal Commission, you'd think that that would kind of be enough. I mean, here you've got this government commission making very astute observations about the failings of Watchtower when it comes to protecting children. And even with that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Jehovah's Witnesses who stopped attending meetings because of that, based purely on, you know, having a feel from what I've gleaned from emails and what have you. But that is only going to give you stagnation. It's not going to give you a mass exodus. Maybe there will be something that happens in the next few years. I can't quite think what that would be. But maybe there will be some huge scandal that will erupt that could cause a mass exodus. But the problem that you have is that Jehovah's Witnesses are believing based on a fantasy that they are heavily invested in. So that to the point where even if you could disprove their beliefs, they will still cling to it. And I'm thinking of, for example, the 1914 teaching, which the more you look into it, the more it unravels. I could actually imagine Watchtower getting rid of 1914 completely and offering no justification whatsoever for the organisation's, you know, divine mandate, just saying, well, listen, we are God's organisation, take it from us, look at all the wonderful works we're doing. I think even if they said that, they would still hold on to the majority of witnesses. So that's what we're dealing with. As far as Watchtower, I think it's two things really. It's, will Watchtower survive 10 years? And will the religion survive 10 years? I think Jehovah's Witnesses will be around almost indefinitely, because religions have a habit of sticking around long after the leaders have died. When it comes to the organisation, as soon as you have a corporation that can get into debt, you also have a corporation that can go bankrupt. And it will be very interesting to see what effect the stagnation in numbers has on Watchtower financially. I think they're already struggling, and it will be interesting to see what happens. But frankly, it wouldn't have surprised me if Watchtower had already gone bankrupt within, say, the last 2 years. So the fact that they're still around suggests that they could be around for a great deal longer. We'll have to see. I hope that answers your question. This was a good one. Hey Lloyd, I was wondering if there is any chance you could make the Watchtower in Focus episodes available as a podcast. That's, again, Rob Haran. That's a great question, and frankly, you're not the last person to ask me this. Not just for the Watchtower in Focus episodes, but people have also been asking me that for the JW Broadcasting rebuttals and various other sorts of long format videos that I do. I guess the reason why I haven't done it so far is twofold. Firstly, I'm first and foremost a YouTuber, and my videos are going to have visual content in them that if I was to just put it into a podcast, I'd start talking about something that I'm showing people on the screen, and people would be like, well, what's he talking about? So there's that. And the second issue is purely time. I mean, I'm barely keeping up with my activism work as things stand. And so the thought of kind of adding on an extra administrative layer of, oh, well, you also need to go onto the podcast website or whatever and upload this, and adding that layer of duties, for want of a better word, for each video. I'm just mindful of being able to sustain that. But having said all that, I will do basically what my viewers demand. So what I've decided to do, actually triggered by your question, I think I'm going to do a post on YouTube, because you can do that nowadays. I just noticed it the other day. Posts. What's this? And one of the things you can do as a YouTube post is you can set a poll. Sorry, did it just go dead there? One of the things you can do as a YouTube post is set a poll. So I can ask my viewers to vote on whether they need me to upload videos as podcast episodes, and I will gladly do that, and then we can do it the democratic way. And then if I do need to spend extra minutes or hours each month sorting out MP3 files and uploading them to the internet, at least I know I'm doing it, because that's what my viewers demand, and basically what my viewers want, that comes first. So I hope that answers your question. Wow, Glenn Friedley has asked a lot of questions. I'll see what I can get through here, Glenn. Hi Lloyd, do you have any plans to translate your book in other languages, for example German? There would be also some people here in Switzerland who would appreciate this very much. Here's the thing with translating my book. Bottom line, it's 800 pages. At least The Reluctant Apostate is 800 pages. Now, as it turns out, I have a number of translation teams who've already started the process of translating The Reluctant Apostate into a number of languages, and I can tell you that German is one of them. But I think the German team at the moment only has like 2 people on it, and that's for an 800-page book. So we're talking, I mean, how long it will take them, given the fact that they have other things to be doing. Goodness knows how long it's going to take them. So I've kind of left it with them, and they can do whatever they are able to do. It's just not financially viable for me to hire someone to do the translation, because it's a very, very niche subject in English, let alone in other kind of lower demand languages. But the good news is that the Escape book, which I'm working on now, that is a much smaller book. So, for example, the Reluctant Apostate weighs in at something like 200,000 words. The Escape book will probably be around 35,000 words, so much, much, much shorter. I think that it's very likely that you will see that in a lot of languages, hopefully German as well, because it'll be much quicker to translate it. In fact, Arthur Weber, who does the book design, he's Romanian, and he's he's simultaneously translating it as he's editing it, because I've got a team of editors and Arthur's one of the editors. He is simultaneously creating the Romanian translation as he's going along. So Romanian will probably be one of the first non-English languages that it's released in. So I hope that gives you something to cling on to, and I also hope to do that book in an audiobook version as well. So the audiobook for the Escape book will be out before the Reluctant Apostate audiobook, simply because, again, it's just the workload with the thickness. Oh, there's a long thing about Toni Morris. I think it's half joking. Glenn also says there is the film Apostasy from Daniel Cockatailo, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, which was released last October. Have you already seen it, and do you know when it will be released in Europe? I don't know when it will be released in Europe. I have actually been in touch with Daniel, and I'm hoping I can get him on the channel for an interview at some point. It just so happens that, I don't know if you've been following, but Apostasy is due to be shown in Edinburgh at the, I don't know whether it's some kind of film festival, I think, in Edinburgh over March and April. And as it happens, I am planning on being in the UK for 2 weeks around that time. So I haven't spoken to Daniel about this yet, but there's just the smallest chance that I could kind of be involved in some way, or go and meet him and interview him in person. I don't know yet, but that's something I guess I need to speak to him about. But I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm very anxious to see it. And I'm very anxious as well to support what Daniel's created in any way I can, because according to all the reviews, it's just an amazing movie. So, Albert, I'm really sorry, my friend, but that is a long. Actually, Albert, if you're watching this, could you condense that comment down into kind of 1 or 2 briefer questions? That would be very helpful, because I can't read through this and do the do something that's presentable on YouTube. Frank Jepson, is it Jepson or Yepson, Frank? You must tell me. Frank says, Lloyd, I'm curious to learn more about how Watchtower's different corporations and legal entities are structured and why. I know it's probably not something you can answer right away, but maybe it would be something to cover in a future episode. I'm wondering who is making the calls from a financial point of view. Honestly, I don't think the governing body have neither the time nor the intellect to handle the business side of things, but if they are not running the business, who is? Well, make no mistake, they're at the top of the pyramid. I'm sorry, they just are. So you have the governing body, and then you have the governing body committees. I think there's 6 governing body committees, I could be wrong. And those governing body committees each have their own responsibilities. That's roughly what the organisational structure looks like. So, and then you have lots of different departments. So, for example, the legal department might answer to the service committee, for example. I could do a video on it, but I guess I'd be mindful of making it, of the challenge of making it interesting to a broad audience that includes people who've never been Jehovah's Witnesses. So it would be a challenge to make that kind of video in a way that's kind of fun and interesting. But I'll definitely take your suggestion on board. Now, with the exception of Albert's question, I've exhausted the questions that are on Patreon. We're now just over 20 minutes into the live stream, and wow, I'm now going to attempt to answer some of the questions that have been accruing in the live chat. Derek McCorkle, who appeared earlier, says, "Hi Lloyd, do you have any updates on the documentary you were hoping to get on Netflix?" So Netflix, just to clarify, Netflix is one of the avenues in which we're hoping to get the documentary the maximum possible exposure. It's not the only one. So, for example, if PBS came along and said, you know, we'd like to show your documentary, we're not going to say, well, actually, it's just for Netflix. So just to kind of clarify that, but I can give you some updates. I can tell you that the filming for 2018 has already started. So Javier and Juan, Javier Ortiz is co-producer with me, and Juan Escopedo is the director. They have already started filming. They went to film a family who were personally impacted, almost tragically, by the blood teaching. And that sounds like a fascinating conversation. I haven't seen the video yet, but Javier is telling me he's going to get me a copy that I can look at. But so we've started production. Another thing we're trying to do is get the money sorted. So in order to do everything that we want to do, we need to, you know, book airplane tickets, we need to buy equipment, we need to do things that involve spending money. And up to this point, we've pretty much just been doing it out of our own pockets. We've started making the film before we've had the money to make it. And as you'll have seen when I spoke to Javier in my last video where we talked about the film, it's kind of like a dilemma as to whether to go straight into crowdfunding or whether to first try exhausting all of the traditional routes of pursuing funding from private investors and from organisations and grants and that kind of thing. And to his credit, Javier is determined to exhaust every last opportunity on that front before we start, you know, going to the XJW community. I hate using that word community, but before we open things up and say, listen guys, we need your help with this, Javier is absolutely determined that we exhaust all other opportunities, and I'm quite happy to let him pursue that strategy, and I hope it gets us somewhere soon. But he is just as anxious to move along with this as I am. And again, he's already started filming, so that says something about how busy he is. Linda Lawton, oh no, I've already answered that Super Bowl one. Sorry, Linda. I'm going to scroll down. Frank Jepson is saying, great reception here, good quality. Well, that's a relief. I hate doing stuff that is coming across as all disjointed. Canal de Urim, hi Lloyd, have you ever thought about how would be your life right now if you'd never moved to Croatia? If I'd never moved to Croatia, I'd probably still be a Jehovah's Witness, quite frankly. I honestly think that if I'd stayed in the UK, because it was only when I was basically disconnected at the meetings because I could no longer understand the language, that was essentially what did it for me and caused me to think, hang on, what do I really believe? So there's every chance that if I'd stayed in the UK and never moved to Croatia, I would still be a Jehovah's Witness. So that is something to ponder. Let me just scroll down. I'm going to have to be boring and go quiet while I read some of these. Carmelo says, I wore tight pants to work last week. I hope Tony's not watching this. Well, the cat's out of the bag on that one, I'm afraid. Linda Lawton says, you must see the movie. I'm assuming Linda means Apostasy. I'm anxious to see it. Becky says, have you considered having the other people post videos on your channel? Maybe Covert Fade or John Redwood, sort of a network type channel. That's interesting. I'm not sure Covert would want to do that, and probably not John Redwood either, because not everyone kind of wants to get in front of the camera. It takes a special kind of person to think, no, I have something to say, and rather than just write an article or post something on Facebook, I'm darned well going to get in front of the camera. I can't say hand on heart that's what either of them are like. But if they were like that, I mean, John Redwood already has a YouTube channel, so I suspect he would do it on that. And I would, you know, promote the channel as much as I could. I think that's a better way of doing it, because, you know, then, you know, if it's your own channel, you have more freedom, I think, and you can just post videos whenever you like. So, but it's an interesting idea. Frank Jepsen says, you got the pronunciation right the second time. Jepsen, not Jepsen. Thanks for asking. Well, I'm glad we've cleared that up, Frank. So anyone watching, if you encounter the name Jepsen at any point with a J, please don't make my mistake. Let that be a lesson to all of you. Canal de Urim. I'm running out of questions now, guys. I'm going to have to go back to Albert's rather long question, I think. But Canal de Urim says, has the governing body abducted Lloyd? Last I checked, no, I don't think so. Linda says, regarding apostasy, I drove to Toronto for the world premiere. I think only one person from the US to see it. Okay, yeah. Again, I'm intrigued by apostasy, and it's had such amazing ratings that I cannot imagine being disappointed when I do finally get the opportunity to see it. Frank Epson, do you think Watchtower will at one point stop the cart witnessing or witnessing in general? Nothing that Watchtower does would surprise me at this point. It's perfectly conceivable that they would kind of say, oh, well, we need to stop witnessing because the Great Tribulation is near. I think that they are that nutty. I don't think that would be a particularly useful thing to do, because especially with cart witnessing, irrespective of whether it's useful, irrespective of whether it brings in people to the religion, it's still a useful thing to have witnesses doing it, because they don't, Watchtower doesn't lose anything by making witnesses do cart witnessing. And if there's any possibility of people seeing the carts and taking literature and later becoming a witness, then it's worth doing it, even if the numbers are terrible. That's the thing with the preaching work, whether you're talking about cart witnessing or door-to-door work. It's in Watchtower's interests to get witnesses to do it, whether there is a gain in terms of numbers or not, because you are involving them in a token act of worship that will keep them busy and make them feel involved and make them feel invested. If you didn't have any preaching, if witnesses could just twiddle their thumbs throughout the week waiting for the meeting to start, then they are more likely, I think, to, because they're less busy, they're more likely to find the time to start questioning their beliefs. We've had a few more questions come in. Wow. Albert, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put your essay on hold. I'll answer some of these. Do you think there's a similar video to Pillowgate for married couples in Bethel? Good grief, imagine what that would look like. Well, what's interesting is, because we had, obviously, the Pillowgate videos leaked to us. And when we first got them, they had a timer on them. And it was obvious from the timer that there was material before Ralph Walls started talking. So Ralph Walls starts talking at, I think, the 50-odd minute mark. And then you get to the end of Ralph Walls, and then immediately follows Gary Bro. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was more material like that. I mean, whether it's that outrageous or not, I don't know. But who knows? And the good thing is that there's still a whole bunch of leaked videos that I just haven't had time to fully manage yet, shall we say. So you can expect more leaked videos, actually, safe to say, over the next few months. Amazingly, this is how weird it gets with the leaked videos. I've actually seen, I think I'm safe saying this, I've actually seen the July JW Broadcasting episode. So the July 2018 JW Broadcasting episode, I have got it, and I'm even considering whether to figure out what the numbering would be and release that now, so that months in advance people can watch it. I don't know, I'll think about it. But that's how crazy it is, frankly, with the video leaks. And so expect there to be a few more I don't think there'll be another Pillowgate, but there'll certainly be other material that I can get my teeth into. Sherry D'Souza asks, do you have any plans to travel to other parts of the world for promotional reasons? Sherry, that is an excellent question. I'm thinking hard about 2018. I would really, well, I've already mentioned that I'm going to go to the UK around March, April. I'm not so sure that's for promotional reasons. It's more to sort out my Indiegogo commitments. So I need to get the first batch of books printed and mailed off, and I'm going to do that from the UK rather than Croatia. It's possible I could do maybe 1 or 2 events while I'm in the UK. I'm backwards and forwards on what's going to happen with America, because I'd really like to go and try and replicate the success of what happened in June. I don't know yet, so I'll have to wait and see what happens there. It's possible that I could do it and fit it in with the documentary. So in other words, when I'm working on the film, we could kind of work it around that so that I'm not going backwards and forwards too much. As far as Australia is concerned, because obviously you're from Australia, Australia is a very long way away from where I am in Croatia. And again, I wouldn't write it off, because I know that Javier is keen on doing some filming in Australia. So he's keen already. I don't need to sell it to him. So if we could get the money that we're hoping to get, yeah, this is the safe thing to say. If we can get the funding that we're hoping to get for the film, then almost anything's possible, because I've then got a reason to come to Australia and then fit the promotional work around it. So I hope that answers your question. Glenn Friedley says, do you think we have free will? And even if we don't have it, would it be better for society if people believe in having it? We're getting into philosophy now, and honestly, I haven't read enough on philosophy to have a real opinion on it. I guess the trite answer is that we have no choice but to have free will. Free will, as far as I'm concerned, is relative. So I can say that since I left the Jehovah's Witness religion, I now have free will, but the truth is I don't, because I'm still living in like a societal construct where if I want to live comfortably, I'm answerable to the bank manager, to the electricity company for paying the bills, to this, to that. I can't just say, well, I'm going to do exactly what I want to do and just go and sit on a beach chair in the Bahamas for the rest of my life. There will be consequences if I don't do any work. So we don't really have free will. But like you say, I guess it's relative. If you want to confine it to relative terms, then relatively speaking, we do have free will, but we're always going to be limited by the kind of lifestyle we want to live, for want of a better word. I hope that answers your question. Frank Yepson says, considering the great number of embarrassing leaks, will Watchtower be doing more to track leaks in order to find the responsible people? I'm sure that they're going to be trying, but I don't rate their chances, because the person or persons who've been leaking material to us have been extremely careful to cover their tracks. So good luck, Watchtower, in trying to find the leak. If anything, I'm actually glad I'm glad if they are expending time and resources in trying to get to the bottom of it, because that's just wasted time that could be devoted to other things. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. Sherry D'Souza says, if you travel to Australia, we have plenty of people who would love to meet up. JW Facts, us and many others would happily host you. Thank you, Sherry. I've been in touch with Paul recently because, as most of you probably know now, I've recently interviewed him. In fact, my interview with Paul will probably be one of the next uploads. We had a fantastic conversation, And Paul mentioned that if Deanna and I ever visit Australia, he's got a bedroom waiting for us. So, which is just incredible. I mean, without wanting to fanboy too much, Paul was extremely instrumental in my waking up from Jehovah's Witnesses, because when I started looking for apostate material, his was one of the first websites that I landed on. And because of the even-handed, calm, rational way that he structured his material, that gave me the confidence to continue looking. So I'm very, very grateful to Paul, and honoured, in fact, to be able to count him as a friend. Carmelo Rosado III says, a relative of mine and I have both faded, and we are the only ones among our siblings that have successful careers. Interestingly enough, our siblings shun us, with the exception of when they want money. That's unfortunately how it is, isn't it? They're letting their stomach do the talking in that situation, I think. But yeah, I mean, shunning's really sad, and I've had a reminder of that, a very personal reminder of that only today. I'm going to try not to be too specific, but suffice to say, I had that awful thing happen where you get blanked by a Jehovah's Witness, and even worse, by a Jehovah's Witness relative. And the only reaction I can describe when that kind of thing happens is pure anger. I mean, how do you justify that kind of behaviour? I can sort of imagine just letting yourself drift away from someone else by, let's say, for example, with my dad, he can just drift away because we're in different countries. It'd be different if I was living next door to him, for example. But with me living on the other side of the continent, it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind situation. But when it's someone who you have a chance encounter with, and your response is to blank them, that is like almost an aggressive. That's like it's no longer passive. It actually requires action to do that. You need to make a conscious decision. This is this is the situation I'm in, and this is how I'm going to respond. It's a conscious thing, and to act in that kind of teenage way, there's no excuse for it. I don't care what religion you're in. So shunning is just awful, and I'm sure you guys watching this, and there are 12 watching now, or whoever's watching this once it gets uploaded, I'm sure many of you will be able to think of very upsetting examples in your own life of times like that when you've been directly shunned by someone. Sherry says, yes, we were at Paul's place that day. Yeah, I sensed there were a few of you while I was doing the interview in the background. So it was a good interview. So that's the live chat questions sorted out. While you guys come up with more questions, assuming you want to, I mean, I've got maybe another 17 minutes to go, I think, before I wrap this up. Let me see if I can make some headway through Albert's epic list of questions. Sorry, Albert, I do appreciate the questions. I think I asked this one already. I'd like to hear your thoughts on an area in which the governing body and JWs in general seem to possess major double standards. One argument the organisation uses frequently in opposition to voting or political involvement is the claim that those who elect a certain official share responsibility for what he does. It's such a long comment. Crumbs, Albert, I'm sorry, I can't read all that. I can't read all that and be in front of the camera. If you're watching this, Albert, if you're watching this live, just try and condense it into kind of 1 or 2 sentences. That will be very helpful. But I'd need to kind of literally go away from the camera for maybe 5 or 10 minutes just to process that. I'm going to check the live chat again. Yeah, there's another. So what can we look forward to in the months ahead? That's a good question, Sherry, which I was actually going to go to. If I ran out of questions, I was going to start saying what my plans were. So let's talk about February, shall we? If I look, I've got like a list of videos I would like to make in January. And one of those videos has actually been voted for by my Patreon backers. So one of the levels that you get when you go on Patreon is the Medo-Persian level. So again, it's going off the immense image of Daniel. Babylon is just kind of $1. For $5, you get the Medo-Persian level, and that's where you get to actually vote on the videos that I make on my channel. So I'll come up with a list of potential topics. You guys get to vote on which one you want for the next month. When I did this one for January, the winning video was about, hang on, am I looking at the right list here? No, wrong one. The winning video was about the paranormal, because I went through, it's not so much of a deal now, but I did go through a period where I was getting quite a few emails asking me about ghosts and demons and the supernatural phenomenon and and that kind of thing. And I can understand why people would be fascinated by that, and why even skeptical people would say, yeah, but surely there's something to this. I mean, there's no smoke without fire. What about all of these accounts? So that was actually the winning video for January by quite some margin. And I'm going to be making a video on that in February. I'm also obviously going to be doing the JW Broadcasting 39 rebuttal. That's the raw material for that is due out tomorrow. That's Monday. So I'll start kind of watching it and trying to gather my thoughts as to what to say. There's also obviously the Paul Grundy interview. We've already had the Jim Penton interview. Oh, that's right. I want to do a mission statement. So I just feel as though the video that I have for my trailer at the moment, which is, I think, Do I Hate Jehovah's Witnesses or something like that. It's a video I'm very pleased with, and it does the job of just kind of saying to a Jehovah's Witness who just stumbles on my channel, look, I don't hate you. Stay for more than a few seconds because I don't desire you to die or anything like that. It's done its job, but I'd just like to have a more concise mission statement of, this is who I am, this is what the channel's about, this is what I'm trying to do. If I can just condense that down to maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just to explain to people what my work is about, because I can understand there being some confusion. What's this guy doing? What's his agenda? So if I can spell that out nice and succinctly, then I'd like to do that. So there's that, and there's also Faith versus Faith 5, and I'm still trying to decide exactly which religion to do that on. So if you have any religions that you'd really like me to do for the 5th installment of Faith versus Faith, drop it in the comments. Not in the live chat, in the comments, because the live chat will probably vanish at the end of this. Let me go back to the live chat, because I've seen 1 or 2 things cropping up. Jacqueline Shaw says, I found your interview with Dr. Penton fascinating. I had no idea how much things have changed on the morality front between the Rutherford and Knorr era. For example, the clampdown on intrusion into divorce, etc. Yes, actually, interestingly, that whole thing about morality, that was one of the things that I spoke with Jim about maybe, let me think, 2 or 3 years ago now. I reached out to him via email and said, look, could we have a phone conversation? And we had a conversation where, because I was writing The Reluctant Apostate, and I wanted to include a chapter on morality, which later became Jehovah's Witnesses and Sex. And I wanted to document the history of Watchtower's intrusion into people's sex lives and marriage and that kind of thing. And Jim told me more or less what he said in the interview, that it was very, very casual during the Rutherford years, and only when Knorr came along with his kind of prudish attitudes, only then did the things start getting more strict, to the point where you had kind of porneia codified to the extent that we have today. So yeah, I found that fascinating. The truth is the Jehovah's Witness religion is changing all the time. And if we were to get into a time machine and go back 50 years, we probably wouldn't be able to recognize the religion and the way it's changed. In fact, even if I look at the last 10 years, I notice big changes. So I'm glad you found that interview interesting, though, because I certainly found it very interesting, and especially as a big fan of Jim and someone who really admires his work and has learned from his work, I was absolutely thrilled to be able to sit down with him. Becky asks, who does the music for your outro? That is actually a track called Not Forever by Martin Hall. It's funny, because I try to keep in touch with the comments. I can't reply to all the comments, but I try to at least scan through them. And a comment I get on almost every video now is, what's your intro music and outro music? And so I've just started saying, Not Forever by Martin Hall, Not Forever by Martin Hall, Not Forever by Martin Hall. But that's who it is, that's the track. So if you go on YouTube, search and type in Not Forever Martin Hall, you'll get the whole track. But it's just a beautiful song that I stumbled on when I was scrolling through tracks on the music supplier that I use, which is epidemicsound.com. I was trying to find some good outro music, and I just clicked on one of the first tracks I clicked on was that, and it just started that, and it just, wow, that's what I'm using, and that's how it stayed. So I'm pleased with it. Let's see. Derek McCorkle, have you ever heard any interesting demon stories from Jehovah's Witnesses before you left the religion? I don't believe demons exist, but I've heard some fascinating stories from JWs myself. I have heard demon stories. I don't remember enough about them to offer you any details. I've heard that, oh, someone was sitting on me, which, you know, could be any number of medical phenomena. I heard someone say that there was someone standing in the corner of the room or something, which again, you know, hallucinations are perfectly common. I've never heard any demon story that's just made me think, wow, well, that absolutely proves that demons exist. Interestingly, when I was a young JW, sort of around my 20s, me and my friends used to go camping in this valley, in this remote valley in the mountains of mid-Wales. And we used to have great fun around the campfire talking about witches, because we had this idea that the valley where we were camping was full of witches. So if there was a house on the hill, we'd say, well, that's a witch's cottage. And funnily enough, there was one story that happened. I might mention it in a future video. I'm not going to bore you with it now. But we did have one kind of expedition to one of these houses, and it did have some symbols on the window that indicated the Wiccan religion, which kind of verified our stories to some extent. But again, nothing that supports the supernatural. We didn't see anyone getting turned into frogs or anything like that. Let's see. Jeff Edwards says, hi Lloyd, just wanted to check in. Don't have any questions right now, but wanted to say how much I appreciate your work. Enjoyed the interview with Dr. Penton. Thanks so much, Jeff. I enjoyed it too. I was really, really pleased to get that opportunity to speak to someone who I admire so much. And I like the idea of being able to learn from the previous generations of XJWs and trying to carry through as much of their wisdom and experience as possible. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. Emily Albanese says, "Hi Lloyd, thoughts on the new governing body member? Do you think sometimes they get voted in to help sway a 2/3 vote on something some of the members want to change?" That's a good point. I mean, I guess it's only going to complicate things if they operate on a 2/3 system, if they are making the number even. Or would it? I don't know the math, but I can imagine it being slightly more complicated, because if you have four and 4 against, I don't know how it would work. I don't know, you'd have to ask them. But as far as the new governing body member is concerned, I don't know enough about Kenneth Cook to talk about him. If you saw the Pillow Talk Watchtower in Focus episode, we actually had a recent Bethelite on the call, Camden Pine, and that's his pseudonym, and we asked him what he knew about Kenneth Cook, and he said he's a really nice guy. So I'm one of these people who likes to extend the benefits of the doubt wherever possible, and who knows, maybe he is a really nice character who will try not to disturb people too much, and will maybe even push the organisation in a more liberal direction. Who knows? Again, I'm happy to see what transpires, but you can be sure that if he starts saying outrageous things, I'm gonna call him out on it. Okay, so Emily Albanese also asks, "Lloyd, I see you're keeping your bed pillows well hidden from the camera." That's just my duvet. Where are the pillows? That's what you can see there. I'll hang on a minute. Sorry, I need to show you. These aren't pillows. This is Deanna's dressing gown, which she's left out. The pillows are securely at the other side of the room. At the other side of the room. I'm not going to show you the whole bedroom because Deanna will kill me. She'll probably kill me just for doing that right now. Jeff Edwards says, "Has the new governing body member been in any of the videos? If so, he certainly hasn't caught my attention before now." That's a good question, Jeff. I actually thought he had been in a recent video. I thought, I mean, maybe I'm right. I had him in my head as the guy who presents the inside story at the Gilead graduation, but I can't be certain of that, and quite frankly, I'm not bothered enough to research it. I'm happy to just kind of wait until there's like an official video showing him or an official photograph, and then make that decision. But that's who I've got in my head at the moment, is the guy who introduced that really cringeworthy song at the 143rd Gilead graduation, which you can see at the end of my 2017 roundup video. Sherry D'Souza says, "Lloyd, you missed Emily's good question above." Okay, sorry about that. I think I've got both of them. I think I've got, one of them was about pillows, and the pillows are off camera but they're not hidden, it's just that this is the angle. And the other one was about 2/3 vote. Again, I don't know. I don't know what the strategy that they're using is. Please let me know what I've missed. All right, yeah, okay. So yeah, that clears that up. And that, I guess, I mean, we're now on the hour mark, guys, so I think we can kind of wrap it up there. But if you have any additional questions to throw at me, by all means do so on the Patreon post. Aside from that, I can only thank you all again for your amazing support of the channel. I mean, last month, I said this in the Patreon only monthly update video, but for January I managed to put out 13 videos, and my goal is 10 videos a month. But for January I did 13, and you know, obviously about half of them were kind of more than an hour in length. And quite frankly, there is no way in the world that I would be able to justify that kind of work rate if this wasn't my job. So you guys are literally making it possible for this channel to have this level of output. If I didn't have your support, there would be videos, don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't be nearly on the scale that we're seeing now, because it's my job. And because when I wake up on a Monday morning, I'm not thinking, well, I've got to get in the car and go to the office. I'm thinking, what's my next video? What video do I need to finish? What do I need to write? And that kind of thing. This is my life now. Wouldn't have it any other way. It's just fantastic to be able to do what I love for my job. And I don't think for a moment that I take that. Sorry, it just had a bad connection thing come up. Don't think for a moment that I take that for granted. Frank Yepson. Jeff Edwards says, oh sorry. Sherry says, thanks to Deanna for her help. Jeff Edwards says, parting is such sweet sorrow. Frank Yepson says, thank you for taking the time, Lloyd. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you, Frank. Linda Lawton, I'll contribute more later, but first, college bills for my children. Absolutely. You know, listen, the whole point of supporting the work is that you look out, for goodness sake, look after yourselves first. That's just a given. And yeah, Jacqueline Shaw saying, thank you so much, Lloyd. So yeah, I guess that's it now, guys. But look out for some interesting videos in the next few weeks. And as always, thank you for watching. And I'm now going to try and shut this down gracefully. Okay, bye.